All right, welcome. Please take a comfortable posture. And so, as we were just sort of establishing, before we started the recording, that it's talked about in some of the Upanishads and scriptures and things, that there's this sense of grief, sense of loss. Like, I wish I could still be in the world. I wish I could still. Once you see that the ego is an illusion, these things are temporary, transient. It's like, oh, but this thing is so cool. I like liking that. And there can be a little bit of a grief when it really starts to get clear that that's that's not you. It's not what you are. It's like a loss. And so they say in the text, it's kind of, it can be cold actually. You know, I think it says, grieve not for that which never lived. Grieve not for that which never lived. It's like the snake in the rope metaphor. If you really thought you saw a snake, let's just say this wasn't a poisonous snake. It was a friendly snake. Okay. And you develop this bond with this snake, but it was never a snake. It was always a rope. You just had this story going on about it being a snake and going this way and that. That was just the breeze blowing the rope. And so it doesn't, you can't grieve for that. It's not real. You can't grieve for that snake. Those emotions that we feel as we awaken, they're lures. They're shiny lures trying to reel you back in to the fiction, reel you back into my life. They tug on the heartstrings. And so when we sit still, we're weathering those storms. We're weathering the unsound argument that the emotions bring up, right? That's the argument the emotion makes is, don't like this feeling, make this feeling go away. It's not based, and it's usually very unreasonable, nonsensical. Everyone else is doing it. Everyone else is believing in their ego. That's the best argument they can make. And to that argument, you just say, well, everyone else is also confused. The disappointment can't really last long because as it becomes understanding, not just theory or something you read or heard, as it becomes understanding, it just, that disappointment or that grief doesn't hold up. You are not anything that you can observe. Even the disappointment, even this memory, what you thought you were, it's all something you can observe. You're not, it's not really going away. It's not really there in the first place. What's really here, you were just calling it your personality, your ego, your life. What's really there is still there, going on about its goings on, just as it had been. The only change is in the storytelling about what's going on. You go from thinking you're the main character inside the story to realizing you are the reader of the story. And as a matter of fact, you get a similar effect when reading a good book. I don't want to put it down. I know people have said, I think I've even done this myself. We start reading the final chapters a little slower because we don't want it to end. We're, we're invested in what's going to happen to the characters when we read the book. Really take a moment to reflect. Is that what you want? To just be in a fictional story, believing you're something that you're not? It's okay for some entertainment, some joyful distraction, reading a novel. But then you go back to your life and you put the book down. In a similar way, this is this three-dimensional novel that we're reading, imaging. And the reader of the book is nowhere in the story. Never was the actual I in the novel. We just projected our ego into the novel. We felt that like we were one of the characters. But never was the reader actually in the story. No, the reader was sitting on the couch holding the book in its hands. This is a lot like that. Your main character is sitting or lying, and the reader or the observer is starting to grow bored. Yourself is starting to grow bored. That's why we do this. Growing tired of the fiction, tired of the narrative. Because that happens with a good novel or a bad novel. Eventually, you close the book and you come out of that story, even though you never really were in the story. You come out of your delusion, illusion, and back into, oh, I'm a person laying on the couch reading a book. In the same way, we are waking up from this story. And that's the path. I mean, when I read books, I like to read sci-fi or fantasy. So, oh, the characters in those books always got a lot more going on than I do here. Who wants to come back here? Just keep reading more science fiction. No, we don't do that. We go back to our lives. Same thing happens when you start to sit like this. You start to get real with it. It's the final few pages of the novel. winding down the story. There's a feeling sometimes when you read a good book. Sometimes I even do this still when I read text. I close the book, just keep the book in my lap, and I close my eyes. There's a feeling like an an appreciation. You don't really remember the story, but there's just this good feeling. You cradle the book that carries the story in your hands. That feeling is happening now for the actual self, the observer of this story. It's an You're getting to this point in your story where you're, as I call it in the showbiz, breaking the fourth wall, realizing that you're in the audience, you're not in the story. You think of that is that waking state. This story that we're reading, watching. Try it in your own mind. Every time you find yourself watching, whether it's in your thoughts or you're feeling something in this physical world, you just, every time you realize that, you go, in your mind. Just reverberate that sound. Every time you find yourself having a thought about this waking state, you just bathe your consciousness with this ah, and you feel that feeling when you just close a good book for a moment. can make this ah sound the entire length of an exhale. Let it cultivate a feeling. Let it it's like a vibration, breaking up whatever thought you are having about this waking state, about this world, and this ego in this world. Like you were reading a good story, and then you put the book down for a moment, and you thought to yourself, ah, there's more to our story than just this waking state. There's also those dreams, dreams of what you'd like to be, dreams of what could be. And when you're sleeping, you have dreams too, cravings. You tell yourself dream stories in the dream state. And to honor those, you'll say, ooh, because those represent the cravings, desires that you still may be seeking. So you can alternate on the exhales. You say, ah, and that represents reflecting on the waking life well lived. And then you, on the next exhale, say, ooh, in your mind. This creates the feeling of what you'd still like to pursue, which is some of the reason why we grieve as we wake up from the illusion. There's still things I want to enjoy about life. Ooh. The ah represents the waking state, and the ooh represents the dream state. Say these sounds into your mind, ah and ooh, and grow distant. See them out in front. See them separate. Even the feelings are separate from the real you. The ah, reflecting on a what life well lived, the waking state, the ooh, cravings, things you'd still like to pursue, have again, your dreams, the shiny thing in the window, ooh, as you make the sounds in the mind, see that they are sounds in the mind, feelings in the mind. You have a distance from them, an undeniable distance, because you are observing them. You are not them. The last sound, hmm, hmm, like when you wake up from a deep sleep after you've had a wonderful sleep, quiet, empty, like you weren't there at all. You wake up in the morning, hmm, the M sound, the ah, the sound you would make after a life well lived, a day well spent. Ooh, the way you feel after a dream makes you want some more or something new. And the the way you feel after a deep sleep, a wonderful night's rest. Focus on these three sounds. Say them into your mind. And see that all of it is separate from you. Just things that you can observe, but they are not yours. Just like when you're the reader of a story in a book, you do not think, oh, that's my story. You were the reader of the story. It is not your story. Ah, the sound, the feeling from a day well spent, a life well lived, the waking state. Ooh, the feeling of a craving, a dream, wanting more or wanting new, the dream state. Hmm, the feeling after a deep sleep, the quiet abyss of nothing, of nowhere. Hmm. Together, these three sounds represent the universe, consciousness, the whole of it, the sound of consciousness, the sound of the universe. Om, A-U-M, Ah, U, Hmm. Make the sound in your mind, Om, on your exhale. One exhale, the whole sound. Om. Feel that journey through consciousness, all of it, the waking world, the dream world, and the quiet silence of deep sleep, the totality. It covers everything, everything you could observe, every spiritual experience, every want, every need, every craving, every high, every low, all a part of consciousness, all contained in the Om mantra. There's another sound. It's like a bookend. On the exhale, you sound Om, but there's a beginning and there's an end to the Om mantra. There's a beginning and an end. Which means that even the universe, even consciousness, is just temporary. Become aware of what surrounds the Om. It penetrates the Om as well. At first, you hear it at the beginning, and then at the end. Just before you begin the Om, and just after it ends. Can you hear that? That's the sound of you, the real you. The sound of Om is just your mind, or just the mind. Can you hear the sound that surrounds the Om? That represents you, the real self. Every exhale, Om. You say the Om into the mind and listen, observe the sound just before and just after. Can you hear the sound? Can you hear that that sound is always? It's during the Om, it's after the Om, it's before the Om. It permeates everything all the time. It's never not there. Like you. That's you. You're never not there. They say one who knows this sound, the sound that surrounds the Om, that one is thunderstruck. thunderstruck, no longer blinded by the eye or deafened by the ears. You observe what is real. You observe what is beyond the sense world. You know the real. Relax from the practice.